All right. So for these actual student real world examples, um, obviously, like our first stab at anything in the world is not perfect. The whole point on going to school and learning is to make a ton of mistakes. This is your sandbox. Pretend like you're 3 years old, right? This is your sandbox for where you get to play before you actually have to grow up and like go get a job and all that silly stuff. So it's okay to make a mistake. These first stabs that students did at thesis statements should have something wrong with them, just like yours did in this class, because you're just learning. And so don't ever think that you have to be perfect the first time around, right? Just try, dive in. I think I've said that 100 times. So the student here wrote for her first stab at a good thesis statement. The United States women's national soccer team should be paid as much as the men's national soccer team. I hope all y'all are yelling at your screens. It's a should statement. It's a statement of the future. This is what should happen in the future. Um, we can't argue what should happen in the future because we have no proof that would work. And beyond that, this statement doesn't really indicate why. Like why? So the alteration is as follows: the United States women's national soccer team is deserving of equal pay compared to the United States men's national soccer team. Depending on how this student goes, it could be a hidden should. If she says is deserving, and then each of her claims is basically a should statement, like the women should get paid as much because of this and because of that, then it's just a hidden should. But if she uses more statements of the past, then it's not. Let me give you an example. So if she were to say, for one of her claims for this revision, if she were to say the United States women has won more games than the men in recent years. The United States women's national soccer team brings in more revenue than the men's national soccer team. The United States women's national soccer team is only paid 30% of gross profits based on revenue, while the men's national soccer team is paid 60% of profit. Now you have an argument here about things that are happening in the past. So this is an acceptable revision depending on her claims, depending on the direction her claims go. If she sticks with focusing on stuff you can prove true in the past with her claims, golden. If she tries to say should statements, things that just because moral and ethical arguments, not golden. You can't really do that because there's no facts to support it except through correlation arguments. The women should be paid as much as the men because in Britain the women are paid as much as men. Then that's a correlation argument. You're comparing two things and then saying that they should be the same just because these two things are seemingly equal, but super easy to throw out correlation arguments and poke holes in it. Okay. You didn't need that whole correlation argument explanation, but now you have extra knowledge for your life. Let's look at another one. I had a lot of sports fans last semester. So this is another actual one. His original is actually on the right-hand side this time. I put these backwards. So the original says, the problem with Canadian soccer can be traced down to its grassroots level. There's some stuff wrong with this. The problem with Canadian soccer. Throughout this semester, I've said over and over, you want to be as specific as possible. So while this doesn't violate any of the rules and it's not a fallacy, it's really, I don't know what he's talking about. Do you know what he's talking about? What problem? We don't even know. Does Canadian soccer have a problem? Are all the Canadian soccer teams addicted to heroin? I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with Canadian soccer. Okay, so the problem, which is very unclear, can be traced down to its grassroots level. Like, what? Like, remember we talked about idioms and we want to avoid those as much as possible? So grassroots level, first of all, is kind of like an American idiom. Like, we know it means down to the fundamentals, but does he mean little kids? Like little kids playing soccer, that fundamental? Or does he mean the administration? Like how the organization is set up and maybe who funds it? Or what the investors look like? Or I have no idea what happened when I read this sentence. Here's the revision. Canada's men's soccer team has failed to qualify for the FIFA World Cup. Yes, okay, We know what the problem is. Thank you. We have some clarity on that. Due to a lack of emphasis on youth success. Now we also have some clarity on what the grassroots level is. So this was really well done. It was a very, very clear revision. Let's look at one more. So this one doesn't have the revision. I want you guys to try to figure it out in your own brain. So it's meant to end on a note where you're doing your thinking cap scratch like I am. The quality of the education system in America is declining, and one major reason for this is the increases in technology and its effects on development, including the growing need for instant gratification. Whoa. So based on the good and the bad, I'm going to give you a hint. It's in there, the thing that's going on with this. This is really big. This is really big. The quality of the education system in America. America's pretty big. The education system in Minnesota is some of the best in the country, and Wisconsin. And you know, if you get down south, not so great. Like Georgia, not doing good in its public education, especially at the elementary levels. So what are you talking about? What part of America? Not all regions are created equal. And then, so that's too big. And then we go on to one major reason for this is increases in technology. There's a lot of technology. There's watches and phones and eye things that begin with eyes, like pads and tad and watches. I don't even know. Tech's big. Tech is big. So wasn't really specific on what technology might be influencing it, and then effects on development, including the need for instant gratification. So that's a bit more narrow, but to first get to talking about instant gratification, the first two CSE sections, really, as I see that the student is going to have to logically define their CSE sections, will have to include all of America's education system is declining, and then all of technology before they can talk about the instant gratification piece. So as an instructor, I advise the student to let's focus on the effects of instant gratification in the education system. You don't have to make a logical connection to technology or even the American decline. Just show what instant gratification does when you're trying to learn stuff in an American system, lecture format system. It doesn't really work well if someone wants the answers now and wants to Google something and move on with their life, and they're expected to sit through several videos of lecture or an in-class lecture. It doesn't really work. Those two things are a disconnect. So this was too big. It violated the rules of being too big. Those were hard examples. Those were hard. The next